Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean. And today we are looking at Apiary, which is designed by Connie Vogelman and published by Stonemaier Games, who did provide us with this copy, but the thoughts are all our own.
In Apiary, this takes place in the far distant future when humans are no longer around and instead sentient bees have decided to take themselves into space and explore the frontiers of space.
Bees in space. But let's just look at how it plays.
You start the game with an asymmetric faction, a bee spaceship, a few space bees, and some resources. And then each turn you place one of your bees out onto one of the 6 sections, where you will gather more stuff, expand your ship, gain seed cards, add tiles to your hive, convert goods, and gain valuable carving tiles. If you place your bee where another bee is, you bump it, and if it's bumped off the board, it gains a level. Your other option is to take back all of your bees, increase all of them, and gain income bonuses. If ever a bee gets to level 4, it gets a special bonus at each location. And if ever would advance beyond level 4, it hibernates, and you lose that bee, but you gain a token in the hibernation comb. Once the hibernation comb is full, everyone gets one last turn, and then the game is over. Then you add up points from your tiles, including your carvings, your planted seed cards, your faction ability, filled in sections of your hive, hibernation comb majorities, and where you ended up on the Queen's favor track. And the Queen of the Galaxy is named.
So that is the nuts and bolts of how it plays, but it doesn't really describe how it feels, because this game was a big surprise to us. At first, I don't know what we pictured this game would be, but we were both kind of like our first play, we're like, oh, okay, so that's what this is. We just had something else that we couldn't even describe in our minds. But once we got into kind of a few plays of it, we understood how light, how quick it was. We really got into that. And then you kind of get to the other side of like, it's like, oh, okay, this is lighter and quicker than I thought. And then it's like, oh, actually, there's like a secret strategy and like there's more depth to this than I thought. So it kind of surprised me twice.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely surprised me twice. And I think it's the depths, the more plays you have that you really get to experience. And it was probably, like every time we played it, I think we've enjoyed it more and more. Mm-hmm. And it is just discovering, because at first it seems like a very simple like resource conversion game. And it feels simple, I think, just because it's explained so well. Mm-hmm. Everything is really clear on the board in terms of what the actions do. So that conversion seemed really straightforward.
Yeah.
But then like after more and more plays, when you are getting like better at your scores and realizing the different directions you can go, and that for such a approachable game, there's a lot of strategy.
Yeah, because those first games really are get your resources, buy your tiles, add your tiles. And that's kind of what you do. And then you get some of these carving tiles, and that's really what you do. But I think there's like we're starting to do more of the convert, we're starting to do more of the grow, and we're starting to realize these other ways that you can play and you can win, because the carvings, while they're kind of the obvious thing, they're right in the middle of the board, they look like they're like the be-all and end-all, that you got to get to. But you can really do well. I've won a game without any of those and just focusing on these seed cards and just getting a few of these that did really well. Or like people have won this game not really doing either of those and just getting so many tiles and filling up this board and filling up the little extra bits on the board, because every time you fill up one of those, it's another 8 points. 8 points is pretty much what you're going to get from like a really well-scoring, maybe not quite as much, a well-scoring one of these seed cards. So every one of those is kind of equal to one of these, but also get you other bonuses. Or you can just bring stuff. There are like 4 or 5 different ways that you can focus and win this game.
Yeah, and we've even gotten to the point, too, where we realized how strong the Queen's favor track is. Mm-hmm. And if you can't fit a resource, you can move one up the Queen's track. So sometimes we don't get a lot of the green tiles, so we purposely are able to just ignore getting resources to go higher up on the Queen's track as well.
And we've really found too with the asymmetric factions too. And that kind of gets into the replayability. So let's talk about that a little bit. The replayability of this game has also really surprised us, because if we had played this once and reviewed it, I think we would have been like, pretty simple resource puzzle. I don't see a lot changing. We would have been totally wrong, totally out to lunch. Because after playing with 5 or 6 different asymmetric factions, or now probably more than that, every game has felt more different than like the tiny little bit of writing that changes these up would have you believe.
Yes, I do agree. It does feel different. I think one of the things to caveat that with, though, is it's not like incredibly asymmetric, but
Right.
it is enough small differences that it does influence how it feels each game. It doesn't feel like you're playing a different game, but the
Right.
different paths you get pushed down are certainly going to change. And that's through your faction, also through your starting spaceship will change that as well. And there are just a ton of these tiles that you're picking up. Those that come out and the order in which they come out will totally change what you can do. And same with the carvings that are available, because it's going to be different each game, and the seed cards. All of that leads to a lot of replayability.
I kind of disagree with you about these factions. Like, you had one where every time someone bumps you, you move up the queen's track. And so that really became a focus for you of like, I'm going to always have 4 Bs, so I'm getting bumped all the time and I'm zipping up this track. And then I've had one that really gave me a lot extra, I believe, for these green tiles. So I just had tons of, like, I had this giant spaceship filled with green tiles.
Yeah, I could see that. You're probably right. It changes it more than you'd expect, given just the small little difference that they can make. And it's nice that there are the starting factions and then the other ones. So if you're playing with like a mixed group where some people are starting out, they can use the starting factions, which are really like straightforward for what they do, whilst the other people are using the slightly more complicated ones.
Yeah, all of the starting ones are just like, get this and it will give you points at the end of the game, which is fine. You can win with a starting faction, but the other ones are a lot more interesting, where they let you really focus on one little aspect of the game. That said, this is still a fairly light to medium weight game, but it's a medium weight game that has got, more under the hood than you'd expect.
Definitely. I think each game I've played, I have felt like I have done something that I hadn't really done the game before. And the more we play, the more kind of, I guess, options of that will run out, but it will still feel very interesting and different each time. And another thing that feels different too is when you play with different player counts too.
Yeah.
So let's chat about that. So when you are playing with 1 to 3 players, there is one side of the board that gets used, and that just tightens up the spaces. So where you get tiles, instead of having 2 sets that you go to for the 4 to 5 players, it's just the one. Everything means you're just going to be more likely to get bumped, which is good.
Yeah, everything's a little bit smaller. I think the grow is the only one that stays totally the same. But outside of that, everything else, like the explore is quite a bit bigger, and there's more carvings, and the hibernation's larger as well. And the hibernation we haven't talked about, because this game is also a bit of a race.
Yeah, it does feel like a race, because the end of the game is triggered when the final space in the hibernation comb is taken. And so at 4 or 5 players, if a lot of people are hibernating and putting those tokens out, you feel this pressure to also make sure you're getting tokens down too. But at 2 players, because it scales proportionately, there are just fewer spaces available. And what that means is if the other player is able to hibernate like 3 or 4 bees in a single turn, that end can come quite suddenly. So even there's this pressure regardless of the player count.
Yeah, it really is. If you have 4 bees at once, that's half of these spaces. There's only 8 spaces in a 2-player game. On top of the 3 and 4-player game, there is also a solo mode. And this is from Atoma Factory, who are the best at this in the world, headed up by Morten Monrad Peterson, who's just so good at solo modes. And this is very much an Atoma Factory. If you've played against Atoma Factory, you'll have a sense of what this is. So it's run by a deck of cards, and the deck of cards tells you where the other bees are going to go. They're going to be filling up spots, but they score very differently. So they score basically all of their points as the game goes. So they're kind of get ahead of you as they go. And then you need to have all of that end game scoring to catch up and beat them. And there are different levels to it, and there are different kind of levers you can pull. And I thought it was really solid. I'm generally impressed by Stonemaier, Atoma Factory solo modes. And yeah, I think this is another pretty good one.
And another thing Stonemaier are also known for is having really nice components, and this is certainly the case here. I really like the art. I think it looks lovely. Even the graphic design, it's all very clear for what all the actions are doing. This little bee here is great. It doesn't need to be as fancy as it is, but I love that it is.
Space Queen bee, I think it's meant to be. Yeah, it's really cool. It's not necessary, but it's really cool.
And the dice they're fantastic. They look amazing, and it works functionally in terms of just being able to raise it 1 to 4 and being able to tell at a glance of what it is as well. The tiles all look good. Yeah, I don't think I have any particular complaints in terms of the components.
There's a few. The dice look dirty. I don't know how I feel about that. It's like this thing that's put on it to make it look like it's kind of a worn spaceship. And I'm on the fence about how I feel about that.
I like that grungy look.
Yeah. I think that's just a difference in... I'm a bit more of a neat freak, and I think I want things to be perfectly tidy, but I get it, and I think a lot of people are really going to like that. But these are tiny little nitpicks where this is, it's really nice. Like, this is a really well put together production. But a slight negative, I will say, is that the theme is very much skin deep here.
Yeah, it does feel like space because there are planets on the board, but bees I'm not so sure about. Maybe, I like that these carved things are hexagons and they're yellow, so they do remind me of, honeycomb. But other than that, I don't really feel the bee theme, which I'm okay with.
Yeah, no, Space Bees is a fun, weird theme, and it would work as well as any other theme. But if you are specifically into bees... I don't think you're going to play this and be like, oh yeah, that really told me something about bees. That was deep into bee life. This could be rethemed into being just about anything. I have no problem with the theme that they chose. I think it's an excellent theme that they chose, but it's just a little caveat worth mentioning.
Yeah, if you really wanted a game that represents bees' life cycle, you're not going to get this here. But if you do like bees, there's lots of bee art. So there's lots of bees in spacesuits, lots of bees talking to each other, references to bees, like these dances that they do, and bees do dances.
That is true. The little dance thing does make sense, and that is such an interesting... If you've played Waggle Dance, that's another thing that teaches you about that. And I do like that, although this is one of the things we use the least.
So in terms of thinking about who this is for... I think this is a really good light to medium, mostly medium game, but it's so approachable that for people who have played light games, gateway games, this would be very easy to teach to them and for them to get on board with. It also provides enough depth for experienced gamers that it isn't exclusive to people just looking for that gateway plus. If you are very familiar with games and you like that complexity level, I think this has a lot in terms of its replayability and the different strategies that you can use.
Yeah, this is, it's very much for gamers like us. We play a lot of games, but we like games that we're going to be able to play in an hour-ish that are still going to give us a good level of stuff to do, but aren't going to totally melt our brains. I think this is right in kind of our wheelhouse of that mid-weight kind of cozy-ish game.
It is. So if you like other games like Wingspan or Creature Comforts, games along that style, I think this would be an appropriate comparison. And it looks good too. So if you like aesthetically pleasing games, I think this also fits the bill.
Yeah, and Stonemaier really are good at that sort of thing. One thing I will say is this is a game, probably like us, that you're going to want to play a few times before you really pass judgment on it, because likely you are going to find those little nooks and crannies in it that maybe you don't expect a little bit. And also, if you do, like, if you're expecting kind of a brain burnery thing, like we kind of were at first, just don't, because that's not what you're going to get. You're going to be probably a bit disappointed by this if you're expecting that kind of like scythe-way game.
Yeah, or if you are hooked on the space theme and you think this is more of a 4X game, this isn't that either.
This has got maybe 2, 3 X's. I'm not sure. I don't remember. There's no exterminating here. They're all hibernating safely and just tucked in for the winter. And that is it. That is our thoughts on Apiary.
Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you've played Apiary or what your favorite bee-themed game is. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.